Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today I want to talk about a topic that I find fascinating, which is gays and the military. Specifically, where in the world gay men cannot serve for their country, and a branch of that topic, which is to me even more interesting, is gays and military service, right? Military duties. So there are parts of the world, there are countries where you are required to go to the military. It's a civic duty. And some countries it's a handful of months, some countries it's over a year. That, by the way, that topic in itself is also very interesting, the idea of military service, but the idea of places where you can't serve in the military as a gay person or as an LGBT person in general, but yet you're required to go to military duty. So I'll dive into that part of things in a second, but first, the catalyst for me to make this video is that at the time of this video, President Trump in the States signed an executive order to ban trans people specifically from the US military. Now, at the time that I'm making this video, that order has not gone through, but it made me think about this topic again of LGBT people serving in the military and how this is still in 2025 such a contentious subject. So of course I did some research, which I want to share with you guys in this video. There's a ton of countries where it's illegal to be gay or LGBT in the military. In 1974, the Netherlands became the first country to ban discrimination against gays in the military. Over the past several decades, more countries have followed suit and done the exact same thing. Here's a world map of what that looks like. And by the way, all the visuals and quotes and such, all the research that I'm pointing out in this video, I will link in the description box of this video in case you want to do your own research. So this world map, right? Green countries represent the countries where it is legal, it is permissible to serve as a gay person or as an LGBT person in the military. The red countries are where it's straight up illegal, and purple countries are the ones where there's a don't ask, don't tell policy. Essentially, you can join, but just don't advertise that you're gay, lesbian, trans, etc. Don't ask, don't tell, of course, the famous catchphrase that came about in the 90s in the States through Bill Clinton's administration. I find this map super compelling because you notice that there's a pattern here, which is the countries that are green all tend to be around each other. The countries that are red tend to be in the same region. So it goes to show you how much culture is not just countrywide, but regional as well. Like beyond just the country, it's also the continent. Now, presumably, the reason why these laws exist, right? Some people might call it homophobia, stigma, all of that, but others would argue, hey, these laws have to exist because the military is a very important protective and defensive front for a nation. They can't have any disorder. They can't have any chaos or instability. And introducing LGBT people, people who have same-sex attraction in an environment where they're around people of the same sex, where they're, bunk bed buddies and they're training together and they're together all the time beyond just your 9 to 5 schedule, it's too much at risk, right? Some people would argue this. However, like in most cases, if you dig enough, if you dig deeper, you realize that there's homophobia and stigma baked into a lot of this, right? Into the language of the penal codes and so on. For example, in doing my research, I learned that South Korea is considered the only developed country in the world which does not allow gay men to serve in the military. The military penal code of South Korea considers sex between two men in the military an example of sexual harassment, and even in the cases of consensual gay sex, it's considered reciprocal rape. Think about how crazy that phrase is, reciprocal rape, essentially affirming that there's no such thing as consensual sex between two gay men. It must be some form of rape or harassment, sexual assault, basically. Now, this narrative is super interesting to me because it helps solidify the idea of gay behavior, gay sex, as unnatural, offensive, dangerous even, right? And South Korea is one of these countries where military service is required of all young men. Some countries call this conscription. This idea of going to the military is like a rite of passage. It's required. So think about how problematic that is for gay men, young gay men, to know that they have to serve an extended period of time in the military in South Korea, fully knowing that if they are discovered to be gay, right, in some way, whether they have attraction to another guy or they get outed, whatever, they are considered the enactors of reciprocal rape or sexual harassment. Think about that. By the way, conscription, military service is such an old school thing, like such an old school macho thing. There's a theme that countries who require it tend to not be that gay friendly or LGBT friendly either. So it creates this conundrum for people, just like young men in South Korea, like I mentioned, where they have to deal with this and they have to figure out, how do I navigate this? Now, I couldn't make this video without talking about how this works for gay men in Turkey. This is very disturbing and disappointing on just a basic human empathy level. The Turkish armed forces use the 1968 definition from the American Psychiatrists Association of what homosexuality is and what it refers to, which is, based on that time period, it was considered a disease. First off, bizarre that they're using a 1968 definition in the 21st century. That doesn't make any kind of sense. Like, if this is something that all men are required to participate in, you would think they would use modern, a modern understanding, or at least be, savvy enough to not refer to something from the 60s, for something that's required of all your male citizens. Like, that to me is wild. But I also think it's interesting that they use the American definition from 1968, whereas in the US, you can serve as an LGBT person today, right? It's bizarre that they're using in Turkey a previous definition from a country that now keeps advancing its rights towards LGBT people. In Turkey, if you want to get out of military service as a gay man, you have to put in the effort to get what's called a pink certificate, like a pink slip, which, by the way, let's point out the fact that it's called pink. Interesting, right? Again, this subtle nod towards a diss at gay men, gay men's feminine stereotype, right? But to get a pink certificate from the Turkish military, you have to jump through some hoops. The essential rule around this is that you have to show the Turkish military photographic evidence of you being gay. And it's not vague, okay? They want evidence of you being on the receiving end of sex with a man. Allegedly, there are also medical exams, whatever that means, to indicate whether somebody's actually a homosexual. Now, the Turkish military says that they have to do this to prevent exploitation of this civic duty, right? That they want to make sure you're gay versus pretending to be to get out of this military duty. But of course, it begs the question, do you have to get photographic evidence of being a bottom? There's so much to dissect here. Not all gay men are bottoms, first off. And second of all, just on a humane level, the idea of asking your citizens to show a photograph of them engaging in sex, and not just engaging in sex, but like the most vulnerable position for a man sexually, that they want you to prove it in a photograph to get out of this duty. It's just to me, it's mind-blowing. And it almost feels like a boys' club, almost like college hazing type of ritual, because there's shame and humiliation and embarrassment involved in it. But also think about, what do they do with these photos, right? Where do these photos go? You're giving somebody tangible proof of your vulnerability, in this case, your Achilles heel as a gay man, and that's in the government's hands, in a place that is not that gay friendly to begin with. So I read this article with the BBC, and again, it's in the description box of this video if you're curious to check it out. And it was an interview with these two Turkish gay men who mentioned what the process was like for them to get out of this civic duty. So the first one was asked to show a picture of him cross-dressing, dressing as a woman. And in the article, the guy says, "I'm a masculine guy. I was offended by that. I don't cross-dress. Like, I don't understand why that would prove my homosexuality." So he declined, and instead he gave them a picture of him kissing a guy. And he figured that would suffice. At the time of the article, they were reviewing it. So they didn't clarify that that was enough, but they were willing to accept it as photographic proof and review it to give him an update on whether he would receive this pink certificate or pink slip. This guy also claimed that he was asked really silly, stereotypical questions like, what toys did you grow up playing with? Do you like football? Are you a fan of sports? Like, stuff that, it's just, again, boys club idea. It's like, you're asking this in the modern era to a grown adult man. And this is the Turkish military. This isn't like a scientific, test, or like psychologists trying to gather data of what it really means to be gay by sampling a population of men identifying as gay, right? No, this is not that. This is the Turkish military. This is, a government entity asking these absurd questions and seeking photographs of proof. So the other guy interviewed in the article said that in the 90s, he was told the only way he could get out of this system was to prove his gayness by showing proof of him having sex with a guy. And so he came prepared to the interview showing those photos. They asked him for the photos, he gave them, and he was cleared. So he got off scot-free from doing this military duty, right? But the thing is it totally consequenceless? Is it just that easy that he gets cleared and it's like, that photo's tossed away? Who knows what they do with this proof? To make matters worse, in a culture where conscription, military duty, is, a rite of passage, it's a sign of manhood and so on, it's baked into the culture as this thing that you're required to do. And once you do it, other doors open for you, whether it's job opportunities, whether it's marrying somebody's daughter. Believe it or not, in Turkey, culturally, that's a thing. So in the article, the guy who got his pink certificate by showing these graphic photos, he shares that he was up for a job interview and the employer contacted the army to figure out why he had not completed military duty. Doesn't that sound crazy? Like, what does military duty have to do with your job? But in a culture where they consider this, a rite of passage, you need to do this, they want to know what's up with the guy. Does he have a mental illness? Does he, did he have behavioral problems? Like, why? Apparently, that's how this employer found out that he received the pink certificate for being a gay man. And although he got the job, this gay man claims that he was harassed and bullied by coworkers throughout this employment, which again goes back to this boys club idea that it's like, why does this even matter? To prove your manhood to society, to prove your masculinity? It's crazy. Think about, what's going through these gay men's heads as well. Like, should I do the military duty? I'm supposed to. It'll just be this thing that you knock out like all men in this country. But they have to think about, how will I be treated? Will I get harassed? Will I get physically assaulted? Like, in this boys club culture, what will happen to me? And the whole premise of military duty is you're trying to instill this value, whether you agree with it or not, but this sense of unity among the men of a country and teach them these skills that can help serve their country. So the idea of excluding anybody and in the process trying to humiliate them or them needing to be humiliated to get out of this duty, psychologically, I think it's really awful. As always, so curious to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments. Did you know all of this? Did you learn something with all the research that I did? So curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. And also, in particular, if any of you are LGBT veterans, I want to know your story. I want to know what your experience has been like, particularly if you hail from a country where you were required to serve as part of conscription. Let us know. Share with the class. Let us know. Catch you next time.